I am live. Today is the 30th of September 2025 and I'm reading The Comedians. It's a novel by Greene. This was published in 1966 and largely plays on Haiti. I'm in the second part of this book here. It's still chapter 1 and it is Roman 4. The three comedians are Mr. Smith, who is was a presidential candidate at some point, Mr. Jones, who calls himself Major Jones, and the story is told by Mr. Brown, who owns a hotel in Port-au-Prince on Haiti. Roman 4. And yet Mr. Smith lingered on. Perhaps when he went over the events of the day with Mrs. Smith, the aid he had given this cripple re-established his sense of hope. Hope that he could do something for the human race. Perhaps she strengthened his faith and fought his doubts. She was more of a fighter than he. Already, by the time we arrived at the Hotel Trianon, after more than an hour of gloomy silence, he had begun to revise his severest criticisms. The thought that he might possibly have been unfair haunted him. He had said goodbye with distant courtesy to the Secretary for Social Welfare and thanked him for a very interesting excursion. But suddenly, on the steps of the veranda, he halted and turned to me. He said, "That word, satisfied, I guess I took him up too hard. It made me sore. But then English isn't his native tongue. Maybe he didn't intend. He intended it all right, but he hadn't meant to say it so openly to you." I wasn't very impressed by that project. I allow, but you know, even Brasilia, and they have all the technicians they need. It's something to want a thing, even if you fail. I don't think they are quite ripe here for vegetarianism. I was thinking the same, but perhaps you must have enough cash to be carnivorous first. He gave me a quick look of reproach and said, "I'll talk it all over with Mrs. Smith." Then he left me alone. At least I thought I was alone until I entered my office and found the British chargé with his special rum punch. Was that just cut out? He gave me a quick look of reproach and said, "I'd talk it over with Mrs. Smith." Then he left me alone. At least I thought I was alone until I entered my office and found the British chargé there. Joseph had furnished him, I saw, with his special rum punch. A lovely colour, the chargé said, holding it up to the light when I entered. "It is the Grenadine. I'm going on leave," he said, "next week, and so I'm saying my adieu. You won't be sorry to be out of here." "Oh, it's interesting," he said, "interesting. There are worse places. The Congo, perhaps, but people die quicker there." "At least I'm glad," the chargé said, "that I am not leaving a fellow countryman in jail. Mr. Smith's intervention proved successful." I wonder if it was Mr. Smith. I got the impression Jones would have got out anyway on his own steam. I wish I knew what makes the steam. I won't pretend to you I haven't had inquiries. Like Mr. Smith, he carried a letter of introduction, but like Mr. Smith, I suspect it was to the wrong man. That was why they arrested him. I imagine when they took it off him at the port, I have a suspicion his letter was to one of the army officers. "He came to see me the night before last," the chargé said. "I wasn't expecting him. He was very late. I was just going to bed. I haven't seen him since the night he was released. I think his friend Captain Concasseur doesn't regard me as sufficiently reliable. I was there, you see, when Concasseur broke up Philippot's funeral. Jones gave me the impression he was engaged on some sort of project for the government. Where's he staying? They put him up at the Villa Creole. You know, the government took the place over. They lodged the Polish mission there after the Americans left. The only guests they've had up till now. And the Poles departed very quickly. Jones has a car and a driver. Of course, the driver may be his gaoler, too. He is a Tonton Macoute. You haven't any idea what the project could be? Not a clue. You ought to be careful. To sup with a baron, you need a very long spoon. That's more or less what I told him, but I think he knows well enough. He's not a stupid man. Were you aware that he had been in Leopoldville? I think he did say once. It came out quite accidentally. He was there at the time of Lumumba. I checked up with London. Apparently, he was helped out of Leopoldville by our consul. That doesn't mean much. A lot of people have been helped out of the Congo. The consul gave him a ticket to London, but he's got off in Brussels. That's nothing against him either, of course. I think what he really wanted with me was to check up whether the British embassy had the right of asylum in case of difficulties. I had to tell him no legal right. Is he in trouble already? No, but he's sort of surveying his ground like Robinson Crusoe climbing the highest tree. But I didn't much fancy his man Friday. Who do you mean? His driver, a man as fat as Garcia with a lot of gold teeth. I think he must collect gold teeth. He probably has good opportunities. I wish your friend Maggiot would take that big gold molar out and put it in his safe. A gold tooth always attracts greed. He drank the last of his rum. This was a noonday for visitors. I had to get into my bathing trunks and dived into the pool. I had got into my bathing trunks and dived into the pool only a little before the next comer arrived. I found I had to conquer some repugnance at bathing there, and the repugnance returned when I saw young Philippot looking down at me from the margin of the pool, standing just above the spot at the deep end where his uncle had bled to death. I had been swimming underwater and had not heard his approach. I was startled when his voice came through the skin of water. Monsieur Brown? Why, Philippot, I didn't know you were there. I did what you advised, Monsieur Brown. I went and saw Jones. I had quite forgotten our conversation. Why? Surely you remember. The Bren. Perhaps I had not taken him seriously enough. I had thought of the Bren as a new poetic symbol of his, like the pylons in the poem of my youth. After all, those poets never joined the electricity board. He's staying up at the Villa Creole with Captain Concasseur. I waited last night until I saw Concasseur go out, but there was still Jones' driver sitting at the foot of the stairs, the one with the gold teeth, the man who ruined Joseph. He did that? How did you know? Some of us keep a record. We have a lot of names on it now. My uncle, I'm ashamed to say, was on the same list because of the pump in the Rue d'Essai. I don't think it was altogether his fault. Nor do I. Now I have persuaded them his name belongs to the other list, the list of victims. I hope you keep your files in a very safe place. At least they have copies of them across the border. How did you get to see Jones? I climbed into the kitchen, through a window, and then I went up the service stairs. I knocked on his door. I pretended to have a message from Concasseur. He was in bed. You must have been a bit startled. Monsieur Brown, do you know what those two are up to? No. Do you? I'm not sure. I think so, but I'm not sure. What did you say to him? I asked him to help us. I told him the raiders across the border could do nothing to shift the doctor. They kill a few tonton macoutes and then they get killed themselves. They have no training, they have no brain. I told him how 7 men once captured the army barracks because they had Tommy guns. "Why are you telling this to me?" he asked. "You are not an agent provocateur, are you?" I said, "No." I said, "If we hadn't been prudent so long, Papa Doc wouldn't be there in the first place." Then Jones said, "I've seen the president." "Jones has seen Papa Doc?" I asked incredulously. "He told me so, and I believed him. He's up to something. He and Captain Concasseur, he told me, Papa Doc was as interested in weapons and training as I was. The army's gone," Jones said. "Not that it was any good to anyone, and what the tonton macoutes have left of the American arms is all rusting away for want of proper care. So you see, it's no good coming to me, unless you have a better proposition than the president's named already." But he didn't say what proposition. I tried to see the papers on his desk. They looked like the plans of a building. But he said to me, "Leave those alone, they mean a lot to me." Then he offered me a drink to show he had nothing personally against me. I said to him, "One has to earn a living the best way one can. What do you do?" I said, "I used to write verses. Now I want a Bren gun. And training. Training too." He asked me, "Are there many of you?" And I told him that numbers were not so important. If the 7 men had had 7 Bren. I said, "The Brens are not magical, Philippot. Sometimes they stick, just as a silver bullet can miss. You are going back to voodoo, Philippot." "And why not? Perhaps the gods from Dahomey are what we need now. You're a Catholic. You believe in reason. The voodooists are Catholics too, and we don't live in a world of treason, and we don't live in a world of reason. Perhaps only Ogun Ferret can teach us to fight." "Was that all Jones said to you?" "No," he said. "Come on, have a scotch, old man." But I wouldn't take the drink. I went down the front stairs so that the driver could see me. I wanted him to see me. Not very safe for you if they question Jones. Without a Bren, the only weapon I have is distrust. I thought that if they began to distrust Jones, something might happen. There were tears in his voice, a poet's tears for a lost world, or a child's tears for the Bren that no one would give him. I swam away to the shallow end, that I mightn't see him weep. My lost world was the naked girl in the pool, and what was his? I remembered the evening when he read his derivative verses to me, and to Petit Pierre, and to the young beat novelist who wanted to be the Kerouac of Haiti. There was an aging painter too who drove a camion during the day and worked at night with the calloused fingers at the American Art Center, where they gave him paint and canvases. Propped against the window veranda was his latest picture, cows in a field, but not the kind of cows they sold south of Piccadilly, and a pig with his head stuck through a hoop among green banana leaves darkened by the perpetual storm coming down the mountain. It had something which my art student failed to find. I joined him by the end of the pool when I had given him time enough to check the tears. "Do you remember," I asked him, "that young man who wrote a novel called La Route du Sud? He's in San Francisco, where he always wanted to be. He escaped after the massacre in Jacmel. I was thinking of the evening when you read to us. I don't regret those days. They were not real. The tourists and the dancing and the men dressed up as Baron and the man dressed up as Baron Samedi. Baron Samedi is not an entertainment for visitors. They brought money to the island. Who saw the money? At least Papa Doc has taught us to live without money. Come to dinner on Saturday, Philippot, and meet the only tourists here. No, I have something to do that night. Be careful at any rate. I wish you'd start writing poems again. He flashed white teeth at me in a malicious smile. The poem about Haiti has already been written once and for all. You know it, Monsieur Brown. And he began to recite to me. Sorry, this is French. Quel sept il triste et noir, c'est citeré. Nous dions un pays fermé dans les chansons, Eldorado, banal de tous les vieux garçons. Regardez, après tout, c'est une pauvre terre. It's a poor earth, that I can just about understand it, but I'm not confident enough to translate it. A door opened overhead and one of les vieux garçons stepped out onto the balcony of the John Barrymore suite. Mr. Smith picked his bathing pants off the rail and looked down into the garden. Mr. Brown, he called. Yes? I've been talking to Mrs. Smith. She thinks perhaps I was a bit hasty in my judgment. She thinks we ought to give the minister the benefit of the doubt. Yes? So we shall stay on a while and try again. So that was the end of this chapter 4, and Roman 4, and Roman 5 is to follow.